like their Series V's, and this is their Connecticut. So you talk so much about liking Connecticut's, I thought I'd grab some.
Man, I love them. I smoked a Maduro over the break. It's just so strong.
It is.
My wife doesn't like the smell.
Mm.
So it kind of hinders the... She doesn't like the... I mean, she doesn't mind the smell of a cigar, but she really doesn't like Maduros. So she won't sit near me, or I have to change clothes right after I smoke. She doesn't like them. Doesn't mind Connecticut. I like the Connecticut's. Any Connecticut so far, I like. I don't know that I've found one that I don't. I think it's just it's not heavy. The smoke smells good. The flavor is there. I'm sure it has something to do with the way it's rolled. Have you been to the local shop here?
I haven't yet. Everyone asks me that.
It's not bad. I like the cigars to be aged a little bit more, and he hand rolls them there in the shop. So I put some in the humidor, let them sit for a month, 2 months, 3 months. They're better. Mm-hmm. But that's just my personal preference. I think he rolls them a couple times a week. So I don't know how long those cigars are sitting there, but that one right there, the Perdermos, like those are on average 6 months before they sell them. Okay. So, and some of them are longer, some of them are less. Do you like yours to sit in the humidor for long?
I do. I'm also not that recent, maybe a year and a half or so, humidor owner. Used to, I just had to buy them kind of fresh.
Man, it's the way to go. So one of the things I love about the community of smoking cigars is you can go into a cigar shop and ask any question that you may feel is stupid or dumb or whatever, and they'll answer it for you. So I've been having problems with the humidity in mine. Like it was getting either really high or really low. Like it wasn't staying consistent. And I couldn't really figure out why. I was using the little packages. I don't remember what they're called. The Bovada, I think is what they're called. Packages, and it's supposed to keep it at 72, but it would go up to like 90, and then an hour later it would be in the 50s. So I went in and I was asking the guy, I was like, hey, what's the problem with this? You know, it's an average humidor. It's not super expensive, but it's not super cheap. And he said that I needed to cure it. So you have to take, man, the microphone's shaking. You have to take distilled water and then resaturate the wood on the inside. And it worked.
So that's what I do to mine. I don't have those packs. I have it's a little thing that soaks up water. It's plastic and has wire mesh inside of it. You soak that in distilled water and let it take in the water, put that in there, and then if I need more humidity, I'll take a little sponge with some distilled water and redo the inside a little bit.
Well, he said you're supposed to redo it like once every other month.
Oh, I don't do it that
often. That's only the second. I've had it for 2 years. That's only the second time I've done it. So lesson learned. Yeah. I don't know. I really enjoy. I don't know. Like I can't imagine my 25-year-old self wanting to smoke cigars when I'm 40. But I enjoy it, and I don't know if it's age, if it's just it gives me solace. Maybe I don't really know how to explain it. It makes my mind peaceful. That's probably the nicotine and the tobacco.
Probably. I just enjoy the time of it.
Yeah.
It's not something you do quickly. It's not something you really do while you're doing other stuff, except maybe recording a podcast or talking with friends.
But we're doing both.
Right. So I just like the time that it takes. It's relaxing.
Well, and my kids don't really bother me. My wife, like I said, my wife enjoys sitting next to me, and like if I'm smoking a cigar, my son will sit with us, but my daughters don't want any part of the smell, so they'll stay away. It's not always intentional, but sometimes, when I need a moment to my wife and just say, hey, let's go have a conversation, I'll light up a cigar. Sometimes I don't even smoke it, just let it burn, and then the girls stay away for the most part.
I haven't figured out anything to keep my kids away yet.
I don't know. I love my kids, but as I get older, I need a moment for my brain to refocus. One of the things when I worked in Sulphur Springs, I would drive from Murray City to Sulphur Springs. I hated to drive. God, the drive it wasn't a bad drive because you'd hop in the car and go 80 the whole time, and you would, be there in 30 minutes or 45 minutes. But the older that I get, the more that I relish the time of silence. I used to not be that way. Like my wife, she could sit in silence for an hour in the car and just be silent. My brain doesn't function that way.
I do that sometimes. Sometimes I want music. Sometimes I want a podcast. Sometimes I'll drive all the way to work. And my drive to the office is about a little over 40 miles. So depending on the time of day, that can be over an hour, well over an hour, if it's bad traffic. And sometimes I will not listen to a thing and drive all the way in just silence.
I don't know that I could do that.
Man, it's good. You should try it.
Well, my drive is like 4 minutes from my house to the school. It takes, on max, it takes 15 minutes if there's bad traffic on 30.
That's my thinking time.
We don't have those in our family, thinking time. Did you watch college football?
Yes, I watched quite a few games on Saturday. I'm the occasional college football fan. I don't follow it as closely as someone who went to one of those schools that plays on Saturdays. That's what I always say. I didn't go to a school that plays on Saturday. Well, they all play on Saturdays, but you know what I mean, the ones that are on TV. So I have to kind of adopt teams, and then I kind of just pick teams that I like and that I want to win. I watched a lot of good games. Texas is represented well in the playoff this year.
I was about to say, how about Georgia and Georgia Tech game? I actually turned it off in the middle of the fourth quarter. Well, I didn't turn it off. I fell asleep.
I did not watch it. I saw the result, but I didn't watch that one. 44-42, 8 overtimes.
Yeah.
Crazy.
My wife's family loves football, and so they text in the family group all the time about it. And so anytime there's a big game, I'll wake up, like that one I woke up and there's like 40 messages.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I don't fully grasp the college overtime rules, or
I like them.
Or don't.
The NFL would use them.
So is it you get a possession, and if you score a touchdown, the other team gets a chance to match it?
Yes. It used to be score a touchdown, game over, and the other team wouldn't even get a chance to possess the ball. But I like that they start them on the 25. And just let them go.
That's the Boise State game, right? When Boise State beat Oklahoma, that's when they changed that rule.
Yeah.
On the hook and ladder, right?
Yeah.
By the way, Boise State's running back.
Yeah, they're back in it this year.
Yeah.
But Michigan beating Ohio State makes me happy just because I don't like Ohio State. And I have a couple friends who either went to Michigan or like Michigan.
Yeah.
My son, that's one of his college schools that he likes. So he likes Michigan and Penn State and Georgia. Those are his 3 teams that he follows.
I don't really have a team. I like if we're just talking sports team, I'm Duke basketball. I like Duke basketball. The Rangers, the Cowboys, the Mavericks. Like, heck, I turned the NFL off the other night and watched the Mavericks play. I like watching basketball. It's to me, it's more entertaining. Mm-hmm. I still watch a lot of football. And then if the Stars are on and I can get Victory Plus to work, I'll watch that. But do you like the new, the way the Mavericks are doing over the broadcast?
I haven't watched it yet.
The antenna? Well, it's just an antenna TV. Like, you can get it on antenna. So I had to buy one. It was like $40, $50. Yeah. So now I can watch it. And I didn't even know the amount of channels that they had on there, if I'm being honest. They have a lot of channels, like 80 channels over the airs that's free, over the airwaves. It's free.
I don't start paying attention to NBA basketball until the playoffs.
Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah, I was listening to the fan this morning about the Cowboys, and I don't know what I want them to do. Like, I want them to win, but at the same time, it's like we're costing ourselves draft picks. So if we're gonna build around Dak, we have to, because he's being paid to, and you're gonna build around CD. In the next 2 years, we have to get some draft picks. So you kind of want to lose. Yeah. But then they were talking about mathematically, you're still technically in the wild card.
Yeah, and we're not playing any hard teams. We'll play the Eagles again. We'll play Washington again. Other than that, we're not really playing anyone.
Like, what do we have, the Bengals this week?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's a win. You can win that. It's a winnable game.
It's a winnable game. Unfortunately, I guess. I don't know.
And, like, I don't want it to... Like, I'm such a fan that I can't stand it when they lose. Like, it used to be 2 or 3 days I would be just pissed. But now it's like, it is what it is now. But I just don't want them to be irrelevant. But I don't think that'll happen for quite some time. We'll have to lose for a few more decades. We're already 33 decades into losing.
To let everyone who's alive for the 90s Super Bowls die. And then they can...
Well, and let's imagine that they do fire Mike McCarthy. I'm still not 100% sure he's going to fire him at the end of the season. If he does bring in, I've heard 2 different rumors of Dion and Jason Witten. If he brings in either one of those guys, first off, if he brings in Dion, I mean, 2 years and now he's got Colorado relevant. He has one of the top recruiting classes in the country. I know the NFL is different, but you're still motivating men who are wealthy. Mm-hmm. I mean, and that's exactly what he's doing right now. Mm-hmm. Witten has the old school kind of feel to it, the old school vibe of, I ruptured my spleen and I still caught a touchdown pass.
Yeah, I don't know.
I just know I just feel like we're in this cyclical coaching cycle. Like we went from...
Dion's made Colorado relevant that they're in the conversation, but I feel like they're in the conversation because they have Dion as a coach. Like they're out of the top 25 now. They lost again. So they're pretty mediocre.
Hey, they're 9-3.
Yeah. But that's like in college, that's kind of the same as 8-8 in the NFL.
That's true. That's a valid point.
So
it's a valid point. That is a valid point.
That's my thoughts. I don't like either one. I want there to be somebody I've never heard of before that's going to come in and be an awesome coach. I feel like he goes after the big names. Basically, it's what he's done last 20 years is go after names that are already washed up.
Yeah. Chan Gailey, though. Were you around when he came and spoke at the church?
Uh-huh.
You remember that? That was great. That was, what year was that? Golly, we were still in the old church.
Like you think about it, he got Drew Bledsoe, which is why Romo got his opportunity because he brought in a veteran, washed-up quarterback.
Yeah.
And then Dak was a backup, got his opportunity when Romo got hurt. Like we've just been playing backup quarterbacks for the last 15, 16 years, whatever it's been.
Hadn't thought about it like that, but you're not wrong.
You haven't gone out and drafted a first-round quarterback and like make the argument all day long that Brady was a 7th-round pick, but that's one guy. That's a fluke.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, we have a first-rounder on the roster right now.
Yeah. So.
And Trey Lance.
Yeah. Who stinks.
Yeah, he must be really bad. Like I've seen him play in the preseason. I thought, okay, maybe there's something there. But if they're playing Cooper, if they're going to continue to play Cooper Rush over him, then there's something wrong with him. I don't know what it is.
He didn't play a lot of snaps in college. They were just talking about that because Denver's playing tonight, and they're talking about Bo Nix.
Bo Nix, yeah.
And Sean Payton was told by Bill Belichick that's one of the key factors that Belichick looks for in a quarterback is how many college snaps they got.
Nick's got a ton.
Yeah. And so, whether Belichick knows what he's doing or not, Trey Lance didn't get a lot of snaps.
I mean, I guess that goes back to the whole experience. The more reps you get, the better off you are at it. That goes into anything.
Mm-hmm. I think it helps them catch up with the speed of the game when they jump from college to the NFL. I think the more experience they have helps them adjust more quickly to the speed of the NFL versus college and the caliber of players are going against.
And so, like, one of the things, I don't really know how to relate football because I only played in junior high because I was 4'2", 90 pounds of soaking wet. But, like, in volleyball, which I didn't play, but I've been around it for the last 15 years. There's such a huge difference in going from a freshman team to a varsity team. And then there's such a huge difference even in varsity to an average team to an elite team.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we played very high level, high caliber volleyball. We were one of the top teams in 4A in the state, and yet we still struggled against teams that were really, really elite. We don't have girls that are 6'4", which helps.
Right.
But, you know, I feel like a lot of times you run into those teams like that are like that, even in football, in high school football particularly, but like even in the NFL, it's pretty level playing field across the board.
There's a lot of parity, yeah.
And then it's how do you manage those people,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when you're one of the top teams in your division, whatever sport you play, whether it's baseball, basketball, volleyball, soccer, whatever, how do you separate yourself away from those teams who are not as good as you? Or what do you do different? And for girls, coaching girls, it's energy and effort. And it doesn't matter the sport. I mean, I've coached basketball, I've coached softball, I've coached volleyball, soccer. When you're coaching girls specifically, it's energy and effort. If you can get them to buy into what you're saying and what you're doing, and you can get them to provide some energy and some effort, you'll be successful. Now, will you win a state championship? No, because that takes skill.
Right.
But
makes sense.
You'll have success. So where do you get your news? This is a question I was thinking about this week. Like, what is your go-to source for any news at all?
The Joe Rogan podcast. I mean, podcast is one spot of it. There's some, I would say I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I do some driving to work. And also I can listen to podcasts some when I work. It depends on the type of work I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm a CPA, so if I'm doing technical work, I have to have either white noise or like EDM music with no words.
Yeah.
But if I'm doing some other types of work, what I call my afternoon, like non-thinking work, I'll listen to podcasts and work. Plus I drive. Plus I like working in the garage. I work out, so I listen to podcasts. So I do listen to quite a bit of Rogan. I have some political podcasts that I listen to, and those tend to be more left-leaning. So I listen to The Daily by the New York Times. I listen to some NPR stuff, Consider This. Then 538 Politics, they lean left. They're probably less, they're not as left, but they lean to the left. Listen to some of The Economist, which is good from a global perspective, to hear some news that's not U.S. based. Besides that, Twitter.
Yeah, that's where I
follow a ton of news accounts on Twitter, and so follow that. Something's interesting, read the article, go to the link, go to the video. I would say, there's podcasts, but those are really targeted. Twitter is where I find out stuff that's happening and get to read more about things that I want to read more about.
Yeah, I'm the same. I don't listen to as many podcasts as I would probably like to. I try to listen to as much of Rogan as I can. I listen to some Jocko. I listen to some of those guys. I just recently started watching The Daily Show on Comedy Central because I really like it's not Bill Maher. Jon Stewart is doing. I really like I
do appreciate the Jon Stewart and Bill Maher, who are definitely left, but have a rational approach to stuff.
Yeah, and I'm really enjoying the direction that he's taking The Daily Show.
I'm glad he got it back.
Me too, and I feel like he has some control of it. And I don't know what the contractual obligations are for each of those two guys, but I really am enjoying those guys.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just finished the Mike Rowe Rogan podcast.
Yeah, I saw that one.
That was a really good one. I really like Mike Rowe. I really like what he stands for. I really like the things that he's pushing. Sometimes I think he pushes a little too far away from the ivory tower, which partly because I'm one of those ivory tower types that I really like my degree.
Yeah.
But I think that it's necessary
Yeah, I think his emphasis on not everybody has to go to college to have a meaningful career is 100% spot on. But you and I both have jobs where you have to have college degrees to do it. So, I mean, it's kind of 6 in one, half dozen in the other. But there was too much emphasis. I remember, like, when I was in high school, if you weren't going to college after high school, it was like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Like, can you not make it, you know?
Yeah.
And
it was an ignorance. It was an intelligence thing.
Yes. And I think that's what Mike Rose pushed back against.
Yeah.
And I'm glad he has.
Well, and like you and I are both kind of in this weird phase of life where we have a daughter is she a senior? Is yours a senior? She's a senior? Junior. So mine's a senior. And like I'm trying to push her in a direction that's going to be the most beneficial, whether that's college or life in general. How can you what's going to benefit you the most?
Right.
Now, for her, and this is going to sound somewhat chauvinistic, I guess, but for women, it seems like college is the best way to go to make sure that, you know, let's be real. The reality is the percentage of women who are going to be plumbers and air conditioning or mechanics or welder is not zero, but it's less than 10%. Yeah. I'm being very generous there. So like a nurse or a teacher or a lawyer or a doctor, that seems to be the route that I see most of those, most women going towards. And so like, I'm trying to make sure that, hey, you know, we can still be successful. You don't have to necessarily go to college, but you have to have a backup plan. Right. Whatever plan A is. Right now it's teaching. She wants to be a teacher, but let's have a plan B and a plan C just in case that doesn't work out. So that's kind of the direction that I'm pushing my kid. For me personally, like my parents, it was either military, college, or get out, go to work. Yep. Like there was that was it. And we talked about it before. Like I had no desire to go into the military, but that was kind of my options. Is there such thing as a solid, good source anymore when it comes to news? How do you go about choosing your news source?
You can follow, like even the AP is getting a little left where they used to be like just straight on. This is the story that happened.
Right.
But it's hard for anyone these days to write about events without giving a bent to it.
Right.
And there's so much competition. I think that's one of the reasons that the news media has gone so far left or so far right into like shock jock stuff because there is so much competition. Back when you had 3 major news networks and a couple newspapers in your town, there's not a whole lot of competition for that. So you could actually just write a story. Now you can't just write a story. You have to keep people's attention or they're not going to buy your product, your newspaper, or watch your cable news where your advertisers pay you money because you have a big viewing audience. So I think that's one of the reasons. So to me, I don't think there is a unbiased news source out there, which is why I try to read from both sides. Yeah. And I'll listen to, I'm not left leaning at all, but I'll listen to those news sources. And you can kind of tell, what their bent is. And you say, okay, yeah, I would have said that differently. There's probably more to that story. And then you go to more to the right and you get kind of that side of it. And you kind of have to form your own opinion.
The problem that I have, and I'm just being completely transparent, is when I listen to something on the left, it just pisses me off most of the time.
I get mad.
And like I try my best, like, and we've talked about this before, to try to see both sides of the spectrum, but most of the time, whenever I'm watching something or I'm listening to something that's on the left, I'm like, I do not agree with this at all. And so the problem is anytime that you push back against that, you're a white supremacist, or depending on where you fall, and you're a Nazi or whatever. That seems to be a shame that they put on you. But I'm not either one of those, right? I'm just a guy who is trying to live life and live my story, and like it just makes me so angry sometimes.
Yeah, I saw a guy talking this week, and he was a black guy, and he said, I'm really getting tired of the media still saying that Kamala didn't win because of misogyny or racism. He said it just wasn't. And the sooner they accept that, this guy was a Democrat, and the sooner they accept that, the better, because you had demographic groups voting for Trump in bigger numbers than they did in 2020 or 2016 that are minority groups. Like, you can't say that, like, are you saying that half the country is misogynistic and racist? Are you saying that women are misogynistic and racist, and people of all different races are misogynist or racist whenever they voted for Trump in bigger numbers than they did in prior elections? So I forget where I was going with that point. It upsets me to hear that.
Yeah.
Continue to be the narrative. And I'm like, no, like, I'm not racist or against women, because I don't think, and I'm glad that Kamala did not win. Like, she was just a horrible candidate and was going to do things and have policies that I disagree with across the board.
And there wasn't one single policy that I read that I agreed with her.
Yeah.
Like, even with Biden, I could get on board with some of it, like, not wholeheartedly, but I could at least see it. Obama was the same. John Kerry was the same.
Yeah, he's really gone off the deep end lately.
Boy, he has, hasn't he? That's a whole topic in itself. But it just feels like we're in this new age, and I don't know exactly. That's going to be the last point we talk about today. We're in this new age of something, and I don't even know really what to call it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but man, the Democrats had a bad week. That video Kamala put out. So you sent it to me, and I didn't have a chance to watch it until later. And I just thought, what in the heck is she talking about? And like, I saw again, we keep repeating ourselves about the dadgum video quality, right? Again, we're just two guys. You've done a great job of setting up our cameras and trying to make sure the angles are correct and making sure we have everything we need to do. And we're putting together a pretty good product for just two guys in a garage that have a decent setup. And you put her in a beige pantsuit with a beige background with slouched over. I don't want to say but she looked intoxicated.
Yeah.
She sounded intoxicated. Like, and this is she was running for president of the United States.
I heard they were required to do that for donors because donors were jumping ship. I mean, the fundraising machine for the DNC and the RNC never stops. It, of course, ramps up as you lead up to a general election, but it never really stops. And so I heard that donors are jumping ship like crazy, which, of course, like, you're not going to donate money to something where you don't know what the direction of it's going to be, or that just lost so horribly. You're going to wait until you find out what the new leadership is going to be of the party, and then you may donate. So I heard that they had to do that video to try to get donors back on board and try to reestablish the message. But here's the lesson you haven't learned that's obvious to everyone. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are not your people to get your donors back on board. They're the ones that lost you the donors.
We're going to be worked up today. I can already feel it because I'm angry about something else that's coming down the road.
This is like, I'm going to sound like I'm a misogynist or against women for saying this, but she needs to go away as far as Democratic politics.
But it's not just Kamala, it's Tim Walz too.
Oh yeah. Like, he needs, like I said, go back and be your governor in Minnesota and lose your seat to Amy Klobuchar in a couple of years, maybe. I don't know. But they're not the people to get your donors back on board, idiots. Like, they just lost you the election, the popular vote, and they're the ones who lost you those donors. Like, they need, as far as Democratic politics are concerned, they both need to ride off into the sunset. Like I said, Kamala Harris will have no trouble being the chancellor of some university. She will be on a speaking circuit. She will get on some boards, and she'll get paid a couple $1 million a year to show up 1 hour a month at a board meeting. Like, that is her future now. It's not politics. So anybody, like I say, we keep bringing this name up, get Josh Shapiro in front of the video camera and say, listen, hey, I know this was a tough one. I know we lost, but we still have things we believe in. This is what we believe in. And like, I don't know why he's not doing that anyway, because I think he's the front runner, or should be the front runner for them for 2028. He's the strongest candidate, tons better than Gavin Newsom or anybody else they're going to put up. So I don't know why he's not doing that on his own and making videos and getting his name out there right now, because there's a vacuum of leadership in the Democratic Party. They don't have anybody, and it's just waiting for somebody with any competence whatsoever to step up.
Well, and I don't feel like it's been some time since the Republicans have had this, right, where there's been a very clear direction. There's a very clear message, and it's very clearly being stated everywhere they turn. And every single day, something comes out from the Democratic side of this where they just blew it. They blew through $1.5 billion. They blew through that. And like,
they say it like they're proud of it.
And
I don't understand.
That was one of the things in the video that she said. Like, she said, we raised $1 billion and you lost it. You lost $1 billion. Yeah. And I keep saying billion because billion is a lot of money.
Yeah, and you paid Oprah $2.5 million.
And you paid these artists. You paid Eminem. You paid Beyonce. You paid Lizzo. And all they're doing is laughing their way to the bank. They don't care about that.
No. And I didn't mean for that little rant to sound like I want the Democrats to get their butts in order, but
a single party system doesn't work either. I want to be clear about that. Like, a single party system is not good.
Well, did you see the Mark Andreessen? We talk about Joe Rogan a lot. It's not like all we listen to, but the Mark Andreessen interview.
Which one is that one?
It's pretty recent. It was before the is like a day or two after the election. So that's when it came out. But they were talking about these clips of Biden, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, all sounding very MAGA, 20 years ago.
Oh, okay. I had to see his picture.
We talk about Dianne Feinstein taking pictures in front of the border wall in Southern California.
Yes.
Supporting it. You talk about, Hillary Clinton doing a stump speech saying they should be fined, they should go to the back of the line, they should be deported.
Yeah.
Like, they said all these things, but then when Trump comes along and says it, then they're against it. But you're exactly right. Like, the Republicans went through the same thing after George W. Bush finished his second term. Like, John McCain was not excited.
No.
Mitt Romney was not exciting.
No.
And then Trump came along, and then that's what got the party back behind him.
But I still don't think it was the first time Trump came through. Because I've said it before on here. I didn't vote for him the first time because I just couldn't get along with I couldn't get on with the message. Mm-hmm. Now, I sure as heck wasn't getting along with Hillary's either, right. But I just couldn't get on board with it. For whatever reason, that's a lot closer than you thought. For whatever reason, and again, we sound like a broken record, when they tried to kill him, that's when I got on board. That's when I was like, okay, this is bigger than Trump. And I even think Trump realized in that moment, not in that moment, but after that, obviously he literally almost was killed. That's when I was like, okay, something has to change, because they're literally trying to murder him in front of everyone. Yeah. And they weren't even trying to hide it. And it just angers me so much.
Are you interested? Because nothing has come out about that incident. But to me, like that, whatever his name is, from Butler, Pennsylvania, from the Butler, Pennsylvania assassination attempt. Like, to me, that is a very JFK event.
I don't think we'll hear anything more about it.
You don't think anything?
I think
Trump takes office, he won't.
Maybe. I think there's bigger fish to fry.
That guy seems like a patsy if there ever was one.
Yes, 100%.
Like, he does 100%. Not seem that competent.
And he doesn't seem that planned out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and here's the thing. What was it, 150 yards away?
Yeah. Have we talked about that on here?
We did, I think, a little bit at the beginning. But over iron sights, thank God. Because if he's got a scope at 150 yards and any skill whatsoever,
it doesn't even take skill.
That's a different outcome.
Yes. If he has a mediocre sight scope and he has even a below average scope at 150 yards, like
being able to lay prone like that, shot up. Maybe it's just because we shoot guns, but that's not a difficult shot.
My daughter, who doesn't shoot guns as often, dropped a deer from about 85 yards the first time she really ever pulled a trigger.
Mm-hmm.
And just talking her through it. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. And she was able to, harvest a deer.
Yeah.
And so that tells you right there that he had no idea what he was doing. And he had never even, like you said, he's a patsy.
Yeah.
Where does that term come from? Do you know?
No.
Me neither.
I'll research that.
Note for
the
people that listen.
But yeah, the
video. This is the next topic. Do you pardon your son if the situation is the same? This is where I'm going with this because we both have sons. You're the president of the United States. You're probably on your deathbed. Biden looks worse the last 2 or 3 weeks, even from his walk through the Amazon when I saw him on doing the pardon speech the other night. I thought, you look worse than you did the day before last. On your deathbed, do you pardon your son?
Yes. I'll be honest, and I probably would. But I also don't spend 4 years saying I won't do it.
Yeah.
I just don't speak to it. But I probably would. But I don't think he cares what anybody thinks. And I think he probably thinks this probably does hurt the Democratic Party for him to do that.
And he doesn't give a flying flip.
No. In fact, he probably wants to a little bit. After they kicked him to the curb.
Well,
he doesn't have any loyalty.
He said that I read an article. I read an article yesterday or this morning about the fact that he was mad at Pelosi and Obama, and that's why he did the pardon.
Yeah,
I would too. To be clear, I would pardon my son too.
Yeah, I think in anybody, I don't know, not anybody, but if you,
I
want
think
to be
most
real
people would,
honest, and you have that ability, but
what a life Hunter Biden's lived, though.
Chalk it up to the Democrats for pardoning relatives. I mean, Clinton pardoned his brother.
Yeah. So I was going to ask I have a friend that's a teacher, and he's kind of a presidential historian. He knows a lot about elections, and he knows a lot more than I ever care to know about the presidents. And I meant to ask him today, but he was busy, if there's ever been a pardon of a son from a president. And I couldn't, in my brief research, there wasn't anything that was super clear.
Yeah, I don't know. So, a lot of the news today and yesterday has been, this opens the door, as if the door needed to be open, in my opinion, for Trump to pardon January 6th. Whatever you want to call them. Protesters, people. Do you care about that? What do you think about that?
Are any of them still in jail?
Yes. A lot, apparently.
I think he has to.
Yeah.
I think now there are some that did break the law.
That's the thing. There are. I'll jump in.
Okay, so
I asked you.
hold on. Do we care that Hunter Biden did cocaine in the White House?
Yeah, which is interesting because did you see in Biden's statement, he said 5.5 years sober, and it's like, wait a second.
Yeah, that was his cocaine.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's ever been proven.
Yeah.
100% he did cocaine in the White House.
Yeah.
So if we don't care that Biden's son did cocaine in the White House, then those who caused the insurrection, maybe if you damaged and I never really felt like those people were insurrectionists, if you will. And maybe that's my naivety, or maybe it's just because I agree with a lot of those people's policies. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I don't think that they necessarily, I think that they were guided.
Yeah.
So I think if you cause destruction and you cause damage, you probably needed to do some time served just to kind of prove a point. But I think he has to pardon them. He can't. I think those guys don't need to be in jail for long periods of time where they track them down because your cell phone pinged somewhere close and there's no video evidence of them being in the Capitol.
I think if you took every single person who was there that day and you lined them up on the line, you could create a spectrum of people who were just there in the Capitol on that day, supported Trump, wanted to show up and let their voice be heard as an American citizen. You've got on that side, you've got that. Then I think you do have some all the way on the other side of the spectrum who were stomping on police officers.
Yeah.
And those people, I'm fine with you being in jail. Like, there are going to be people who out there who will disagree with that and say none of them should be in jail. They should all be pardoned. Like, you don't know everything they did.
Correct.
But if there's hard evidence that they committed those violent type crimes, then let the justice system work. They shouldn't be sentenced more. I don't think because it was political. I think whatever the punishment for that crime is what they should be sentenced for. But I think there are far too many people still in jail that probably are because it was called an insurrection.
Yeah.
But I mean,
I think he has to.
You got the people that are just mulling around the halls of the Capitol. Like, you should know.
Like, dang, this is cool.
Yeah. I've been to D.C. a few times. You can't get close.
No.
You know, and I've walked around the Capitol, and you can walk at the Capitol. You can walk pretty close up to the steps. The White House, they've extended the fence around it, but you know, you got to have an idea if you're walking around or pushing a barricade out of the way, and you're walking inside the Capitol,
that there's some
like,
kind
you gotta hope something triggers in your brain, like, I'm not supposed to be here.
Yeah.
And I don't want to hear the argument about, well, my tax dollars paid for that building so I can go into it. Yeah, my tax dollars paid for the school in my neighborhood too, but I can't just walk in. Like, you got to have some self-restraint. So I do think that a lot of them will be pardoned, and I think that's the right decision. Whether Biden pardoned Hunter or not, I think Trump was going to do that. So
I hadn't really wrapped my brain around that completely.
Yeah.
I hadn't put a whole lot of thought into the January 6th stuff. I think that this will be a smoother transition than what we had the last two. I did see that earlier last week, like maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, Trump's team and his transitionary team agreed to meet with Biden's team and start the transitionary process. I know we talked a little bit about this last time, but I think that's a good sign.
Yeah.
Because the last two have not been as smooth. I think also that has to do with Biden kind of sticking it to the Democratic Party. I think also it has to do with, maybe not directly, but some of the news that came out today. I sent you this like right before. But the COVID committee, the House Committee for COVID, what is this called? Hold on. It's really small on my computer screen. The Corona Pandemic Selected Committee, the application and after action review of the COVID-19 pandemic. So what this is like a commission from Congress who actually was, after a little bit of research today, was put in place by Pelosi to investigate the coronavirus, to investigate the findings, to investigate everything from the beginning to the response to economic. And the major findings were the NIH funded gain of function research at the Wuhan lab, not a conspiracy. The Constitution cannot be suspended in times of crisis, which, why in the world they did that in the first place or thought they could do that, mind-boggling. Okay. COVID emerged from a lab leak. This is not a conspiracy theory. There are 6 pages on why this was not a conspiracy theory of the 556 pages.
Yes.
Okay. The EcoHealth and Dr. Peter Zanzak should never, again, that's in all caps, receive taxpayer funds. Public health officials have lost the trust of the people. Trump Operation Warp Speed was a success. The COVID response was rampant with fraud, waste, and abuse. And the last kind of footnote of the finding was the prescriptions cannot be worse than the disease. Lockdowns had horrific consequences. So this is where I'm getting angry. Like, just reading about this just infuriates me. Now, I have a personal story that goes along with COVID. So my son had open heart surgery, right? So we go in February. This is prior to lockdown, and we have all the testing done, and they tell us that we're going to do this in May. It was a major heart surgery where, open heart, they cut him from his sternum all the way to his belly button, and long process to get that done. Okay, so this all happens in May. So we go into lockdown the middle of March. His surgery is on May the 29th. It's scheduled. So when we first happened, the first response is okay, what are we going to do? Like, can we still have the surgery? Well, he has to have the surgery. This isn't like we've delayed it as long as possible to let him get as old and as mature as possible as we can. The second thing is okay, are we going to be able to go in there? Like, when we first found out, they told us that neither one of the parents are going to be able to go into the hospital. Now, I don't know about you, and I don't know how many people actually are listening to this, but I was not comfortable with my 3-year-old son going into the hospital without us there. Right. And I don't know how many parents would have been okay with that. If you're okay with that, I'm sorry. This is probably not the podcast for you. So we get a little bit closer to surgery date.
Nobody's going to be okay with
we get a little closer to the surgery date. Okay. And we go in for the pre-op. Everyone is covered from PPE from head to toe. Like, the nurses are covered. They look like they're in dadgum hazmat suits, like we're going to have Ebola, right? Mm-hmm. That's the best way to equate it. So I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist of viral diseases. I don't know anything about that other than what I've read in the history books. Yeah. But I know a little bit about viruses and how they're transmitted. Okay. This virus was a lot like the Spanish flu. I know a little bit about the Spanish flu. Did quite a bit of research about it in college. Okay. The Spanish flu is not much different transmitted wise than COVID. Okay. Not much you can do to stop the transmission. Not much you can do. That's just the way it is. And now what we know about COVID is it's exactly the same way. Right. So here's when I knew that COVID was just a bunch of bull honky. So we go into the hospital. Through lots of prayer and lots of emails and lots of convincing the doctors to let both of his parents go into the hospital, they let us both in. Mm. Now, we have to go in. His surgery's on Friday. We have to go in on Thursday. Now, we walk through like herded cattle. They test us. They test him. We then have to be sat in quarantine for, I don't remember exactly how long it is. Time in that period as we've gotten further away from it has kind of gotten away from me, so I can't remember how long we were there. It seemed like 6 hours, maybe less, but it felt like that long. They come back, you're negative for COVID. Okay, but you cannot leave the hospital grounds. Okay, we go in, we sit in our room, they perform the surgery. Now, they tell us you can go to the parking lot, but you are not allowed to leave the hospital grounds. Okay, you can go into the parking garage, see your family, and come back. But only one parent at a time can go out of the room. You have to always have someone in the room with him. This is a COVID rule. So I'm thinking to myself, like, I can leave the building, go to the parking garage outdoors to see people. He's not allowed to leave, but that's not because of COVID. That's just because he had open heart surgery. Just downstairs, so I don't know if you've been to Children's Hospital in Dallas, just downstairs, there's a protest of about 10,000 people walking by. Now, I can hear them, but I can't see them. But if I can hear them, logically, I'm thinking they're breathing in and out of the same air that I'm breathing out of. 10,000 people are walking the street right across the street from us. Most likely, odds are some of them have COVID. Mm-hmm. But I'm allowed to go back in the hospital without being tested. Mm-hmm. The doctors are allowed to leave the hospital without being tested. Mm-hmm. It just didn't make sense to me. Now, again, I'm there to get my son taken care of. I was not going to push back against anything because, one, I didn't want to get kicked out. Mm-hmm. 2, it's a children's hospital where you're trying to do everything you can to remain calm. 3, I'm trying to manage myself and manage my son and help my wife, and we're trying to guide each other through this process. The whole time I'm sitting here thinking, this is a bunch of bull. Like, the people who are next door to us in the next room are in the same position we're in. That those doctors are leaving that room, coming in our room. There's transmission probably going from point A to point B. At that point, they're starting to find out that the masks and stuff don't work. So this is my whole point of this. It's a long ways to get there, but I'm getting there. They, in my immediate family, caused years, if not decades worth of trauma because of this experience. Having open heart surgery was hard enough. Right. Putting our family through this bull because of some stupid policy just pisses me off because the effects are still being felt down the road.
Yeah.
Right? We're still having to live through those and help my son and our family through those processes. And now come to find out, a senator who was Democrat, by the way, who commissioned this, is telling us that the prescription cannot be worse than the disease, quote unquote. Well, that tells me that everything that you did was wrong. Like every single way that you managed this was wrong. Not only did you set my family back, not set us back, but you caused trauma to our family, to my family specifically. But now you caused billions of other people to have trauma because of a response that you now politicized. And it just pisses me off. The more that comes out about it, it didn't make any sense. Like I can go to the grocery store and be around thousands of people in Walmart. Some were masked, some were not. But if I walk up one way down an aisle and then go back around, it just didn't make sense.
No, it was all dumb. They didn't know what they were doing.
But then say that. That's my point. And that's my whole point in all of the policies and stuff that are coming out now is please, for the love of God, have some common sense. Please, for the love of God, if somebody is not doing their job, fire them and get someone in there who is doing their job. Why can we not do that? If Fauci had offered up some bullcrap excuse, then he needs to go. Bring in the next person who will help us.
You can't admit that you're wrong, though, because then it shows that you're weak.
But it doesn't. It doesn't anymore. It doesn't anymore. I know that that's the excuse that they're going to give, and I know that that's the answer to all of this. Well, we were trying to do what was best. Bull crap. Bull crap. When you saw pictures and images in California when they said you had to be outdoor, but then you see Hollywood being able to do whatever the hell they wanted to do, and some poor shopkeeper who's just trying to keep his doors open isn't allowed to open his business.
Right.
That's a lie.
You know, it's one of the conspiracy
Sorry, by
theories
the way, I
about
didn't mean, I admit that was a rant, but I didn't. It pisses me off.
One of the conspiracy theories is that they used COVID to find out what they could and couldn't get away with. I think it backfired, though, because I think it taught the American public what not to allow. Like everybody, the reason they were able to do that, honestly, and this is not the fault of anybody, is that the public in general in the beginning got on board with it and followed the rules and did what they were told they were supposed to do. That won't happen again.
No.
So if there was any type of test to try to see what they could get away with, to see what they could do, that's not going to happen again. It backfired on them.
But I feared the boy who cried wolf. Yeah. That's what I fear. If I'm being honest, like when COVID first started, it scared me. It scared me because I didn't know. We've never experienced anything like this. Again, I'm a historian, so I've read and I knew exactly what the Spanish flu was. But this was being put in our faces as every person who gets it is going to die.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us had seen the movies where that happens. I think it has a lot to do with it as well. When you've seen all of these pandemic and epidemic type movies, and then somebody tells you, hey, it's happening.
Yeah. It's a fear monger.
Yeah. And it worked once. I don't think it's going to work again.
At least not in our lifetime.
No.
But my district did not. They did everything that they said they had to do, and they enforced the rules to the best of their ability. But ultimately, like, you can't keep a mask on a 4-year-old. You can't even keep it on a teenager. No. And so, like, I look back, I was looking at some photos the other day, and like in our August when we're going back, and like half the people have a shield on, and I'm wearing some space cadet suit because I couldn't wear the mask because it would fog my glasses, and if I had the PPE mask on, it would like stick to my glasses, and so then my glasses would look like this, like I was this, and then I would get dizzy because I couldn't see out of the right way of my glasses, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. I mean, but I followed the rules because that's the type of personality that I have. But at the same time, the experience that I had to live through is not unique. Everyone had their own trials and tribulations through that time. For us, there was no financial burden because we didn't lose our job or we didn't do that. But every single person on the planet was affected by this. And we're still feeling the effects, and we will feel the effects of this because for the next decade, at least the next decade, and maybe longer. And these commissions like this are not new. They did one after 9/11.
Yeah, but they don't get the press.
No. And like you said, I haven't seen, other than on Twitter, I would be willing to bet, this just came out today, it's Monday, December 2nd, I would be willing to bet it'll just get swept under the rug.
Yeah.
And nobody will ever even talk about it because it's just, everybody knows now. It's not news anymore.
It is good to know, because the next time we're saying, hey, this isn't right, like this is wrong, this is what's actually happening, and everyone looks at you like you have three heads, you can point back and say, well, that's what you said whenever we were saying that it was a lab leak and that it was manufactured. Everybody looked at you like you're crazy. Then, well, turns out that was actually true.
Yeah.
So you keep that in your back pocket the next time you're being told you're a conspiracy theorist.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but the more that I look at conspiracy theories that were conspiracy theories 5 years ago and they're no longer a conspiracy theory, I'm like, dang, maybe I am.
Well, I think with almost all of them, there is some element of truth. Now, you can go down the rabbit hole and expand and expand and expand, and that may not be true, but I think with all of them, the reason they stick is because there's some element of truth to them.
Yeah.
At their core.
And I think that for me, it's so personal that it's hard for me to separate some stuff. Because you and I both know people who passed away because of COVID. I remember the exact moment I got it. This is gonna sound crazy. It's gonna sound crazy. So we were at school. Everybody's masks. Everybody has masks on. They had those gator things on. We had to wear them, and we're doing the best we can to social distance. And I'm standing next to a girl, and she goes up and she serves. And as she serves, she coughs, and she kind of coughed. Well, as she did, her gator kind of removes from her mouth, and I feel her breath go across my face. The next day, she tested positive for COVID. 2 days later, I tested positive. I mean, it wasn't her fault. That's just...
Yeah. I officially was diagnosed on January 6th, 2021.
Whoa.
On that day. Insurrection Day. I don't believe it was an insurrection, but that's just what I call it. So, which is, I was just starting to get busy. I'm a CPA. Pretty much as soon as the year's over, things start ramping up, you get busy. And so I was really getting, like, January 4th, I think, was the Monday that week.
Yeah.
And I started feeling bad, felt really bad the next day. Talking to a friend of mine that Wednesday morning, he was like, you have COVID. He's like, the symptoms he was a doctor. The symptoms you just described to me, you need to go in and get tested. I'm sure you have it. Sure enough, went to just a CVS or whatever, took the swab, like, yep, you got it. So they gave me some medicine. I felt like crap that day. I was no appetite.
Did you lose your smell?
Yes.
And taste?
Yes.
Same.
Laid down, took a nap, tried to get some rest, woke up to red and blue flashing lights coming down Constitution Avenue in Washington, D.C. And I was like, what is going on? Because I had gone to sleep and they're just counting the electoral vote. I was watching that on the news, right? I would watch it anyway. And I remember stepping out of our bedroom. They'd quarantined me. And my wife was like, I'll just bring you stuff. Me and the kids will stay out here. Because again, you just don't know. You don't want the kids to get it. They spread so easily. So I remember stepping outside the bedroom and I was like pointing at the TV. I was like, and she's like, it's not a dream, but it's okay. Because I was like, what world did I just wake up in?
Yeah.
Because it was one of those naps where you wake up and you're like, it feels like you slept for 3 years.
Yep.
I know
exactly what you're talking about.
And I look at the TV and there's I thought it could have been a movie.
Yeah.
With all the cop cars coming down Constitution Avenue when the reinforcements showed up to disperse everything or whatever. And I was like, so that was quite a day to the first time. I had it 3 times. So.
I only tested positive once, but I know for a fact I had it at least 2 more times. Yeah. But then it just got to the point to where it's like, if I get a sinus infection, I can't, there's nothing I can do. Just take some medicine and move on.
Right.
That's kind of where I was at. But though these types of things really frustrate me as I get older because it has a direct impact on those around me. And this is the first time where specifically the federal government has an action that has affected me directly. Now, I know that there are other things, taxes, things like that, but this is the first time that it affected me personally directly. So the tariffs. This is your wheelhouse.
Kinda. He announced Canada, Mexico, and China, and he announced smaller percentages than he had previously said. So 25% and 10%, which I think is measurable and doable. It'll still be interesting to see what gets put pen to paper. But like I said 1 or 2 podcasts ago, I don't think across the board 100% tariffs are on the table, even though that's what he said during the campaign. I think a lot of it is saber rattling and a big stick. You saw Justin Trudeau, the PM for Canada, coming down to Mar-a-Lago to say, "Hey, can we talk about this?"
Well, then did you see he lost?
Well, yeah, he's going to be out. I mean, that was in the works anyway. But
have you done it?
I think you see, like the saber rattling works. Yeah, and that has maybe a greater effect than actually instituting tariffs would have.
Yeah. Have you? This is off the tariff subject, but did you follow that election at all?
Just cursory.
So blue is in Canada is the same as red in the United States. Yeah. So they went all blue with the exception of the Yukon territories, which is interesting.
It is.
But then they went green or yellow. So it's hard when you don't follow. When you're trying to compare apples to apples, it's hard because it's so different. Mm-hmm. And we didn't talk about. Did you happen to see in New Zealand the haka dance lady?
Yes.
That is fascinating to me. Yeah. That was their filibuster.
Yes.
And it worked.
Yeah.
And it was for those who don't really know, they were trying to take some tribal lands away from these groups of people who have been under this same treaty for 150 plus years. I think it was like 180, something like that. Mm-hmm. And they're trying to rewrite that treaty. And they filibustered by doing the haka, and they dismissed everybody. Yeah. Which is interesting. Yeah. If you don't know what the haka dance is, just look it up on TikTok or Instagram. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I would say in the past, global politics has always been more exciting than ours. Although ours have been pretty exciting the last years.
The last decade.
So, but yeah, I think the tariffs will have the desired effect of getting serious conversations to the table. I don't know that you're going to see I don't think you're going to see 100% tariff on everything from China. I don't think that's
feasible
going to happen. And I hope it doesn't, because that's too far. That's too severe. We don't have the infrastructure here to support that.
The
tax policy to back that up. And that's the other thing, is that if you are trying to onshore more manufacturing, which I think is great. Like, we have gone from a country that used to make a lot of widgets to not really making any widgets. And most of the major corporations, I mean, we still make things, but we make them elsewhere. We sell them here. Like, we're a company a country who sells things here, and we also have a big service industry type of economy. And so I think onshoring some manufacturing is a good thing. Those are good jobs, and it's good for us to have as a country, to not lose as much of our manufacturing as we have lost. But like you said, it takes time to bring back.
Correct.
If you want to bring a company back over here, you can't just be like, all right, on January 20th, 1201, this tariff goes in place. And so we've got, a month and a week or so to move everything. No, you can't do that. So I think some graduated. Honestly, I think he drafts it early in the presidency and says, this is what I'm going to do. Let's some changes take place, and lets it take place over a gradual time. Because you got to have the people here, and you got to have the infrastructure here.
Well, you have to have the votes too
to be able to bring it back. So,
and I don't think that I think when you talk to people about tariffs, they don't understand the impact that it'll have. I mean, and I feel like you and I won't speak for you. I'll speak for myself. I don't fully grasp the end game of a tariff, right? I know what it is. I know what by definition it means, but I don't understand, like, how is it going to affect me if I need to go buy a car, right? I don't understand how, like, because we buy Toyotas. That's just what we've always bought. So Toyotas are manufactured in another country. They're shipped and assembled here. So does that mean are they exempt from the tariff? I mean, that's kind of where I get stuck because, okay, so we're a big avocado family. Are we going to have a tariff on avocados from Mexico?
25%.
Yeah. And so, like, that's not, I mean, I'm still going to pay it because we love avocados, but.
Yeah. So I think those types of items you'll see the price increase on.
Yeah.
On your more durable goods in the economy, that's where the manufacturer has to make a decision.
Yeah.
Because if they just raise the price across the board by that 25% or 10%, depending on what country it's coming from,
yeah,
that'll slow down volume. And kind of like we talked about on the last podcast, that's going to slow down sales to a point. So there is a line of how much can we raise the price to recover this tariff that we're paying versus how much of the tariff is going to eat into the company's profit to keep volume where it needs to be for the maximum benefit for net income.
I think you're going to see some tariffs.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know what.
He did it his first term.
Yeah.
You know, he's been a fan of tariffs. It's not something brand new to this term. He instituted tariffs in 2016, but he did them targeted and a slow ramp up. And I think he'll do the same thing. You just can't go out there and on the campaign trail and say, well, I'm kind of thinking about maybe, what do you think, 5 or 10%? You know, you got to come out strong.
Strong, yeah.
And I have no problem with that.
And then dial it back.
Yes. Yeah. And then get something a little more reasonable and a little more effectual. But also it's like the threat works. So you can't also come out at the gate, like I said, on January 20th at 12:01 and sign the tariff. Now, he might. I mean, he's already rattling the cage a little bit now, saying what he's going to do. But I think you'll see a slower ramp up, and I think it'll be a slower ramp up to measure the effect on the economy.
Yeah.
Because, like, you don't want to tank it. Like, the economy's struggling now.
As it is, yeah.
You know, we're not in a strong economy to start adding in tariffs and increasing costs when inflation's been what it's been. So I think you'll see a slow ramp up. I think you'll see it targeted, which is kind of what he's proposing so far. So that's my guess and looking at my crystal ball. Sort of related, but sort of not. Did you see that with Doge, Elon is floating the idea of a 2-year severance for federal employees who are let go because their departments or efficiency? Yes.
Interesting.
I know.
Okay, so hold on. This is the first time I'm hearing this, so I got to think about this. So if you're a federal employee.
Now, this is Elon, who's not a government official, who is an advisor to the president in this area, floating this idea. So who knows if it'll happen, but it's his idea. So if you, like, say,
if you're in a department and
like
your
we
department
talked about
goes,
the Department of Education, where
okay,
they only show up a couple times a month. Say they can cut their force by 50% because they just don't need that many people.
Okay.
Though that 50%, Elon is floating the idea that they would get a severance package of their salary for 2 years. So you don't just have mass firings and people out of jobs.
I think my initial response is people will take it. That's my first initial response. The second thing is the savings that you would have 2 to 4. So you're getting through this 2 year, you're hoping the economy kind of brings itself back. But man, that's
it's 2 years to go find another job.
And most of them will. Most of them. So then, like,
and get double income.
Yeah.
Also, do you think it's interesting that it's 2 years and that gets you to the midterms?
Politically speaking, that's smart.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't know if it happens. I don't think you could fire a bunch of federal employees without giving them some kind of severance, like that has to be.
I guess maybe I just assumed they would get one.
Yeah, that has to be. I don't think it'd be 2 years, but they have to get something.
Something 6 to 10 to 12 months seems to be plenty.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you're talking about a person who's had a federally funded job. There has to be some qualifications for that, though.
Also, another downside to this, like, here's the thing. Like, I have zero doubt that there are federal employees who need to be cut from the budget.
Correct.
But you still kind of feel for somebody losing their job.
Yeah.
Like, if you're like somebody 100%. Who actually shows up at the Department of Education every day and does your job and love what you do, like, I know those people exist. Like, hearing all this, you got to be like, start to dust off the resume. But if you go to the private sector, you've been a government employee.
Yeah.
You have excellent health benefits.
Correct.
And pensions.
Correct. Which
private companies have mostly all gotten away from. So say you're like at year 18, like how does that
see, this is a problem that I have with that is you can retire from the federal government, go in as a rehire, work for 10 to 12 years, and then get pension again. So you can have double pension. And let's say you served military time before that and you did your 10 to 15 years, you then have military pension. So you could potentially have 3 pensions.
I know somebody who has that.
I know multiple people who have that.
Who went in the military at 18, did 20 years, got out at 38, had a whole nother career, then got out at 58 and still were able to go work again. And they're on their 3rd job and working towards their 3rd pension.
Yep. And that happened a lot in the railroad. Happens a lot in today's economy. And that's good for those people. Yeah. But you're talking about a majority of the public who have no idea that even exists. Yeah. And so if you're getting 3 checks from the government, that's an issue for me. Yeah. Right? I don't want to take money out of people's pocket because that's none of my business. But at the same time, like, you're getting taxpayer money.
Right.
And that's where it's going to hurt. Like, that's what I don't think people understand. It doesn't matter if he has a tariff. It doesn't matter what he does. Eventually it's going to squeeze. Eventually we have to start paying down the debt. Yeah. We cannot continue to spend
$1 trillion a year in interest.
We cannot do that. Like, for my kids' sake, for your kids' sake, for people listening, we have to do something. And if the first step is to offer a severance package to federal employees for 2 years, I did read, it
really cuts into your cost cutting, because if you're like approaching something, if you're approaching a business that's inefficient and you're like, okay, we need to cost cut, personnel expense is huge.
Yeah.
Like, so that's really going to cut into your
that's an easy
measures.
That's an easy fix per se. But that goes into the newest cabinet member of the FBI, Patel. Now, I've watched a couple of things on him. The first thing he says he's going to do is he's going to get rid of the FBI in Washington and send them out and make them be cops. First off, I guess I didn't realize there were 7,000 FBI employees in Washington, D.C. Why in the heck there needs to be that many there, I have no idea. But I think that part of draining the swamp that he didn't do in the first cycle that he was in as president, this is the first step, is cleaning Washington doesn't necessarily mean like it means exactly that. It means sending the federal employees out to their constituents wherever they may be. So, like, for example, why are there not more federal employees in Laredo, Texas, or Brownsville, Texas, or El Paso, Texas, or heck, in Miami? Why is there not more people in New Orleans along the, in those ports? Why is there not more in Kansas City or Des Moines, Iowa, or Billings, Montana? Why are there not more of them there? And then put them under the states. Like, let them be state employees. Like, let's do away with that Washington swamp. I don't really like calling it that because then that kind of degrades the history of it. But do away with that in some form or fashion. And I think the Patel guy is a Trump guy. He is definitely a Trump guy. But there are a lot of people upset with that pick. A lot of left-leaning people who are very upset with that pick.
And I can't find out why. I mean, I've looked at his history. I looked at what he's done. I've looked at what he said. I've watched some interviews. Yeah, I get it. He's definitely a Trump guy. He's definitely a drain the swamp guy. He is definitely and I use this term in the nicest way, he's a radical with his ideas. He's not a status quo, go with the flow kind of, I'm the next guy for the job. I'm going to kind of retain everything the last guy did and change it up a little bit. No, he's going to change it up a lot.
But that's what has to happen.
I get that, but every nomination Trump's made so far is that way.
Yeah.
He's getting a ton of pushback. This is one of those things where it's like both and. Like, yes, you could probably significantly limit the FBI and what the FBI has become. I think legally speaking, you have to leave them in place, at least in some fashion, because they're the only ones who can go after interstate crime.
Yes.
So, but I do think that they have taken away from what state bureaus of investigation could be handling for crimes inside of the state. Like in Texas, if you have a big crime, a major news-getting crime, or a crime that involves a peace officer, we have the Texas Rangers who come in and assist with that. And I don't know if other states are as cool as us and have that too. I don't think they are.
Have you ever met a Texas Ranger?
Yeah.
They're badass.
Yeah.
Just the whole aura about them.
Yeah.
Awesome people. And I don't think other states have that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they have their state police and they have a state investigators and state bureaus. But I think you can limit the FBI. You're going to have to keep it in place somewhat, but I think he's on the right track. Of saying this has gotten too big and this is not the place of the federal government to come in and take over from local jurisdictions. And I think that is Trump is a small government guy. It's funny. He's been a spender, but he's going to turn out in this second term to be a saver and to make it more efficient and to be a small government type of president. And that comes with a side note. I was just thinking about this a few days ago, probably like on Thanksgiving or the day after, and I don't know why Dick Cheney was in my mind, but whenever Biden was Obama's vice president, Dick Cheney was the devil. He was the Antichrist because of the wars in Iraq. You think about how much Obama ran on the war in Iraq. Like, go back and think about that 2008 campaign and even the 2012 campaign for Obama and how much he ran on that being a mistake and that he wouldn't do that. And that's one of the things that got him elected. And Dick Cheney was the enemy and the devil then. But Dick Cheney endorses Kamala Harris. And all of a sudden, man, Dick Cheney's a great guy. Yeah. Look what Dick Cheney did. Look what we got Dick Cheney endorsing us now. And that just goes to show that so much of what government has been, and I say has been with optimism that it's going to change, has been people in power padding their own pockets. And the Cheneys are, like we talked about a couple podcasts ago, are those war types that make money off of it. And so they hitch their wagon to Kamala Harris because, like, that's another dumb thing. But like, what was Hitler known for, right? Making war and genocide. Okay. Put genocide aside for now. But if you want to just talk about making war, compare the Democrat Party right now and Trump and tell me which one is the one that wants to make war the most.
Not Trump.
Not Trump. And so that's why, and I'll say it and I'll say it again, the Cheneys supported Kamala Harris, and there is a change that is coming, and it is one that is going to upend all of that. It's going to say, no, government shouldn't be there to pad your pockets and make you rich and make you powerful. Government should be here to serve the people, and we're going to make it smaller and shrink it because it's gotten too big.
I think I sent it to you about the Dan Crenshaw interview he did.
Yeah.
And then the House, the Senate hearing where they said they were bringing up term limits and then also how they should not have insider trading. And like several of the members of Congress walked out. The problem that I have with this is I don't expect you to give up your business. I don't expect you to stop practicing law. I don't expect you to even stop trading. But what I do expect is you to be held to a code of this is right and this is wrong. If you are told that something catastrophic is about to happen, which government officials are, and you all of a sudden make a trade, that is insider trading.
It is.
For these guys to be able to sit there like Dan Crenshaw is saying, well, I'm not a millionaire. Bull crap. You may not be a millionaire, but you got $999,000 in your bank account. Well, I've never traded $25,000. No, that's not true either. Like, all you got to do is go to @unusualwells on Twitter, and they have a full bio of everything that you've traded. Yeah. And that's the problem that I have is, Crenshaw's from our state. Yeah, Crenshaw follows a lot of the same policies that we both agree with. But what I don't like is when you lie to our face and say, well, I traded some, but not a whole lot. That's bull too. Yeah. All of you fools are up there trading. Yeah. And that's the problem that I have.
And it's not a problem to say you can't.
Yeah.
Because
100%.
I work for a really big accounting firm. There's a whole long list of stocks I cannot own because I work for a really big accounting firm.
Correct.
And you know what? That just comes with the territory. You know what? Pete Rose can't bet on baseball either. Like, maybe he wants to bet on baseball, but because he has an influence on the outcome,
correct,
he can't bet on it.
R.I.P., by the way.
Yeah, poor guy. And like, hey, you want to serve your country.
You're not serving by trading insider trading.
You're not. And if that means you have to give something up, that means you have to give something up. And listen, I'm not coming at you from somebody who hasn't had to give some stuff up for doing what I do.
Correct.
And I'm not a public servant. So the standard for you should be a lot higher.
Correct.
Than someone who has to give up betting on sports or someone who has to give up owning stocks because they work for a certain company.
And even doing our podcast, right? Even doing this, there are certain things, we haven't even talked about this, but there are certain things that you and I cannot talk about. There are certain things that we cannot say. There are certain things that we can't put on a camera, right? Because of the jobs that we hold. And so if I'm held to a standard as a measly old teacher and coach by my community, right, and my standards that are being placed on me, the standards being placed on a congressman should be way higher.
Yeah.
Way higher.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you have to stop doing what you're doing. I'm not saying that some of the rules that they're putting out there are a little bit far. Like, you have to sell your business, you have to completely remove all your assets. I don't think that should happen either. But what I am saying is that you, your spouse, and any family member of yours cannot trade to make profit off of certain aspects of the stock market.
That's the same rules I have to follow. It's not just me. My wife can't own certain stocks if she wanted to just because of what her husband does.
Correct.
Like, I know.
But why are we held to a separate standard than what Congress is? That's the problem that I have.
And I do mind what you just said, that they have insider trading opportunities because of the information they get. What I worry more about is the votes they make and the decisions they make to help their stock portfolio.
Correct.
Because if they know, hey, if I vote for this, that's going to allow this company to expand, which, hey, as a conservative, you should be voting for a lot of those things that's going to help grow business. But if you're given the opportunity to vote one way or the other to help a certain business that you might have in your portfolio, that's wrong, and you're a public servant and you shouldn't be able to do it.
Correct.
Like, that's another reason for term limits. Hey, it's not forever, buddy. Like, serve your time in Congress and then
go home.
You're done, you go home, and your investments have been put in trust during that time and they've done whatever they've done, but you weren't able to make decisions on that.
And I don't, this is not hard for me. Like, to me, this is a simple fix. You cannot make money off of stocks while you're in office. Yeah. And if you don't like it, then don't run.
Or off of trades. Like, I'm fine if you say, hey, I want to cash out, just put it all in the bank. Or, and maybe there's issues with this as well, but I'm like, hey, put it in trust where you're not controlling.
Yeah.
And then you're just kind of stuck with the ones you got.
But it's only for a short period of time, right? If you're running in the Senate, you run one term. It's only there 4 to 6 years, depending on where you fall.
My term limit would be 2 terms in the Senate and the same amount of years. So 2 terms is going to be 12 years.
Correct.
The same amount of terms as a congressman. You get 6 terms, 12 years. You get 12 years. You get a dozen years, and then you're done.
I've thought a lot about this, and I don't have a good answer, because I think 12 is enough, but maybe 3 for senators, because then that gets you 18, and that could potentially put you through 2 presidential terms. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you got 2, if you're consecutive presidents.
And I'll take anything.
Yeah, there has to be a happy medium, and I don't think that it needs to be a amendment to the Constitution yet, because I think they need to do a trial and error, and what that trial and error is, I'm not exactly sure, because I'm not so sure that Congress needs to be 6 years. Why can 2 years not be? Why can not 2 terms be enough, which is a presidential one, which is a presidential for 4 years? Yeah. I'm not sure that there is a clear answer, or if it's a trial by error kind of situation, but I agree with you. There has to be something. And I think that it'll pass.
You can't have, Joe Biden 50 years in government, Nancy Pelosi, Feinstein.
Or Mitch McConnell.
Yes.
Like, I just saw that he was appointed to some House chair committee. Yeah. And why
He's a former majority leader. He only gave up the majority leader spot because he locked up and blinked out 3 times in the last year and pulled a Biden, and
that's so sad when that happens.
Just go home, man.
So sad.
You served. Go home to Tennessee.
By the way,
Kentucky.
Dianne Feinstein was the lady I was trying to talk about. Is it Feinstein or Feinstein? Feinstein. I hope, and this is something that I think about often, is I don't want to be the old teacher that everybody's trying to push out, right? And I realize I'm only 40, but I see it all the time. Not so much in the district I work for now, but in previous parts of my educational career, you see those guys who are kind of on their way out and they're just buying their time. And nobody likes them. They're just there because they need to get 2 more years and to retire. Mm-hmm. So how do we not have that, right? They tell you as a teacher you need to retire when it's time to retire. When you get to that rule of 90 or 85 or whatever, retire. Well, that's usually around 60 to 62. And we have people who are 80 running for Congress.
See, that's something else. Where I work, you have mandatory retirement. 62, you're gone.
Really?
Yeah. Because it makes room for new people to come up.
Interesting.
If you make your way to the top, partner in an accounting firm, and you just stay there forever, then that person below you is not making partner. The person below them is not making director, senior manager, all the way down the line. It brings new people in.
Interesting. So I didn't know that.
Mandatory.
Is that across the board?
It's not across the board. No,
okay.
Smaller firms won't have that. Bigger firms do.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And see, I'll retire when I'm 62. Because I'm in that weird rule of 90 where you have to be your age and you have to be 62. Yeah. I think the state will change it by the time I get to 62. But one more note before we end. Did you see in Illinois, I wrote it down, Illinois, Oregon, and New York, there are teacher union strikes going on. Mm-hmm. These, first off, I need to clarify, teachers in Texas cannot unionize because we are a right-to-work state. Yeah. Any state, quote-unquote, employee cannot be a part of a union. So when we look at the news and they're talking about teacher unions, this does not include Texas. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times when I'm watching these reels and things on the news, they lump Texas in. And my message is always, this doesn't happen in Texas, okay? Partly because we're not state employees. We're actually locally employed. We're employed by the local district, which is then paid by the state. Mm-hmm. So for example, I don't get state benefits. I don't get the insurance that a state employee gets. I don't get the pension that a state employee gets. Now, we pay into a retirement system, but it's not a state pension. When I explain that to people who work outside of the educational world, they don't understand that. Well, wait, I thought you worked for the state. Well, I do. I have to meet certain state requirements, but I'm not a state employee. I'm employed by my local school district, who then receive funds from the state. And I think that is something that is a miscommunication by teachers and those who represent us. And I think that if I can get anything out from this is we need to treat Texas teachers different than they treat the rest of the country, because we are not employed the same way as New York, Wisconsin, Oregon, Illinois. Those are employed by the actual state or the city and the state that they live in. And so I think that is a huge message that is being missed. It's being missed across our state. And I support Texas Teacher. I am a Texas teacher. I am a part of an affiliation. I don't even know. It's not a union, but it's I don't know what they call it. It's like a Texas Teachers Committee Association. I guess it's an association, not a union. And then the last thing, and this is kind of going to be a thought for ponder, something to ponder, is are we in a cultural, social, political revolution without even realizing it?
Oh, I think we are, and I think I realize it. I mean, the changes. Just think about the people that are a part of the political revolution taking place. Like, there's a lot of different types. It's not partisan. You could take Trump's cabinet, put them all in a room, and you're going to find a lot of key issues they disagree on. So politically, yes.
Culturally,
I think so as well. Some good, some bad. But almost even like we were talking about with COVID before, I think you have an awareness of, I think a lot of people for a lot of years have gone to work, raised their families, done what they're supposed to do. And I think just kind of said, okay, government's over here and we got to pay taxes and that stinks. And I'll vote every 2 or 4 years. And, and that's just kind of the way people have gone without giving a lot of thought to government's control and what they can do. And I think COVID changed that and showed them, hey, government needs to be kept in check. Like, you should be more active in knowing and selecting your leaders and what they actually do stand for. I mean, having said that, I think COVID and that response is one of the things, like going way back, that got Trump elected in 2024. Like, you can talk about everything about how bad of a candidate Kamala Harris was. You can talk about the economy, which COVID had a lot to do with itself, and the handling of that. But I think that's where, like before Trump was even out of office in 2020, I think that's where this kind of revolution started. And it's been building ever since. And then November 5th, last month, was just the big balloon bursting or whatever to say, yeah, it's hit its breaking point.
Yeah, I think we're definitely in a political revolution. I don't think we're culturally and societally there yet. I don't think society has quite. I think you and I are on the fringes a little bit. Now, I know we have friends that are in different realms that listen and would maybe disagree, but I think as a whole, I think culturally we're not there yet. I think it's starting. I think the political revolution has happened. I think we're in the downhill of that. I think the cultural and the societal shift is just now on the uptick. Mm-hmm. And I think that something, I don't know what, good, bad, different, I'm not sure exactly what that will be. That will be the tipping point to where we go back to where we're going to see an even bigger societal and cultural shift. I feel it happening. I see it in the school building. I see it with interactions in the public. I see the shift happening, and I'm not exactly sure how to explain it. You just see it.
Yeah.
And you didn't see it prior to COVID. And so we saw a lot of people having voices that didn't need to have a voice. And I think that as societal and culture shifts, those that are speaking out are going to be the forefront of the change. Now, do I think that you and I are part of that? We're a very, 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 very small part. do I think that people like Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson and people like that, they are the spearhead of this cultural and societal change. And I think that a lot of times we aren't aware of it because of the history books typically tell us what it is and when it happened. But I think the amount of information we have now is showing us that it's happening in front of our faces, whether we realize it or not.
I agree.
Man, I love this.
Yep. It's been good.
It's always fun. I don't know.
6.
Is that 6? I'm enjoying this.